All right.
Welcome, everybody. This is amazing. So far, we have 137 people joining us, and I suspect we'll have more people trickling in as we go. In case anybody has any technical issues or has to jump off early or knows somebody who wanted to hear Dr. Cooney Horvath but wasn't able to join us, this will be recorded and we'll be sharing out the recording afterward. I am State Representative Jennifer Leeper. I have the responsibility and privilege of serving as the co-chair of the Education Committee in the Connecticut State Legislature, and been really focused on this issue and bolstered by so many parents on the ground and educators who have noticed that tech is not just a perfect substitute for what we might consider analog learning. And there's been a groundswell of interest. And so I am so grateful to be joined by my colleagues, Representative Birger Javala, who has a really organized and just incredibly brilliant grassroots group of families in her district in Ridgefield, and also Senator Maroney, who is a nation-leading legislator on states taking the lead to regulate AI. I will let them introduce themselves a pinch more, but I just want to make sure everybody who's joining us knows exactly how lucky we are to have Jared Cooney Horvath, who is a neuroscientist, educator, best-selling author who specializes in human learning and brain development with us today. He currently serves as the director of LME Global, an organization dedicated to bringing cutting-edge brain and behavioral science to educators, students, and communities. Jared has conducted research and taught at Harvard University, Harvard Medical School, and the University of Melbourne, and has worked with more than 1,000 schools around the world, and is the author of 6 books, including his newest, The Digital Delusion, which we are so
Yay!
excited to be talking with him about today. I encourage everyone, if you don't already own it, go buy it. Buy it for a friend. It really should be required reading. But with no further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Representative Birger Javala to make a few comments.
Thank you so much, Representative Leeper. So yes, I'm State Rep Amy Berger Javallo, and while I am not the co-chair of the relevant committee, I am the co-chair of the Transportation Committee. So why am I on this? Well, I'm on this particular Zoom in this particular group because of a very passionate constituent that Rep. Leeper mentioned. Emily Bauer is a member of my community and brought this to my attention, this really big issue, really big concern. And as someone whose children have already gone through the elementary schools here in town and watched in real time the way that this progressed, because I also worked in our school district for about 8 years. And so seeing all of that in real time really kind of, it just threw into sharp relief what Emily was talking about and why she was bringing Dr. Cooney Horvath into the conversation. So I just want to flag for everybody who's watching, there is the Connecticut chapter of Distraction-Free Schools, and the OK to Delay side. There are 31 chapters in 12 states, which includes Ridgefield, but of those 31 chapters, 12 of them are here in Connecticut. And I think that that's really important to highlight because it shows that people here are really paying attention. You can find Emily on that site. She is listed as Emily Fernandez on the site, but she is our Emily Bauer, and I'm really, really excited to be part of this with her and because of her and on behalf of my own constituents. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to one of my favorites over there, Senator Maroney, who is the Senate Chair of General Law, and he really is just the resident guru of AI in the Capitol. So, Senator Maroney, it's all you.
Thank you very much, Rep. Berger Cavallo and Rep. Leeper. Thank you for including me. I feel honored that you guys have included me on this meeting. You guys are both are leading in this and so many other important issues in Connecticut. So thanks for bringing me along. As you mentioned, I've worked on tech legislation. So I've worked out our consumer data privacy in Connecticut. I've worked on AI regulation, but also our children's data privacy and chatbot legislation this past year in our AI bill. We know that over 70% of teenagers are accessing chatbots regularly. And it's important that we try to make sure these are just tools and that technology is used in the right way and that we're protecting children online. I think many of us have seen what happened with social media and how that went unregulated for so long. And we're trying not to allow that to happen again when we see with the emergence of AI and chatbots and other emerging technologies. And we know the impact it's had on the mental health of children. We've seen the increase in anxiety and depression among our young people. And so this is an issue that's, I think, near and dear to all of our hearts. We're all, in addition to being legislators, parents. My son is a rising junior in college, and so we know that this is something that we need to do better on. And so with that, I am very honored to turn it over because I'm standing between everyone who's listening and the actual person they came to hear speak. And I'm also looking forward to learning along with the rest of you. So it's my honor to turn it over to Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath.
Thank you so much. And believe it, the honor is 100% mine. You guys are on the ground doing actual work. I always feel like a poser because I just sit at a computer and crunch data all day, every day. But you guys actually get stuff done. So genuinely, you guys inspire me, and everything I do comes from the work you all are doing. So it is my absolute honor to be here with you, and I'm glad you all were able to join us tonight. So what are we going to take a look at tonight? We've got about 45 minutes to kind of chill out together here. What I want to do is just do a breeze by the data, the key ideas, the key components of the digital delusion, of the arguments that we're going to be trying to make about digital technology and learning. And where I want to start then is by acknowledging that human beings are wickedly good at predicting the future of education. Like, we are really good at it. It's one of our superpowers. I'll show you what I mean. Thomas Edison in 1922, textbooks will soon be obsolete in schools. The motion picture is destined to revolutionize education. Well, turns out the textbook market is going to crack about 300 billion this year, highest it's ever been. So turns out he was wrong, but that's okay because William Levinson, 1945, is going to get it right. A portable radio receiver will be as common in classrooms as a blackboard. Well, I polled 100 schools recently. All of them had blackboards or chalkboards. Only 3 could point to a portable radio receiver. So he got it wrong. But that's okay because popular science will get it right. By 1965, over half of all students will be using an automated school marm. Well, I recently polled 450 kids. Exactly 0 knew what a school marm was, let alone how we might go about automating one of those. So they got it wrong. But that's okay because Skinner finally got it right. B.F. Skinner, 1985. With the help of computers, students will learn twice as much in the same time and with the same effort as in a standard classroom. Computers. Digital is the future. We finally got this right. Well, not so fast, my friends. The OECD has recently been forced to admit people who use computers very frequently at school do a lot worse in most learning outcomes. That is their emphasis, not mine. JPAL, International Research Organization, computers do not improve grades and test scores. Online courses lower academic achievement compared to in-person courses. Here's a paper published recently, biggest paper ever done looking at primary year students and the impact of in-class tech use and reading comprehension. Hey, the conclusion of this study? You got it. Even small amounts of digital device use in class, 30 minutes, are negatively related to scores on reading comprehension tests. Well, yeah, that's the youngest kids. What about the oldest kids? Here's a paper looking at 105 moderators of learning at the university sector, so college kids. Easily the worst? Oh, you got it. Expanding the use of digital technologies at the expense of other forms of instruction is likely to have detrimental effects on achievement. Any other form of instruction? Say, here are 2 papers published recently. One that demonstrates if your school were to invest in air conditioning, you could expect to see better learning than if you buy a laptop for every child. Perhaps Larry Cuban, emeritus professor at Stanford, the guy who coined the term EdTech, put it best when he said computers were supposed to improve learning and alter teaching. Neither of these things has occurred. Now, here's the weirdest thing to me. Larry Cuban is slowly becoming pro-tech. He's just starting to pepper in the argument that we're all using it wrong. We got to learn to use it better. JPAL, still pro-tech. Y'all using it wrong. You got to learn to use it better. OECD, still pro-tech. We need more tech in schools. You're using it wrong. Use it better. Mate, if I had 6 decades of data showing that cigarette smoking harms your lungs, the proper response isn't going to be, you're smoking wrong. I just need y'all to smoke better. The proper response is going to be to say, what is going on here? And address the underlying mechanisms. And if it turns out this is a non-solvable problem, then we really got to consider where we want to go next. So what is going on? When it comes to tech and learning, what is happening? Now, real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't just show you some of the data, just so you know where we're coming from. So let's just go back. When the OECD said people who use computers very frequently at school do a lot worse, they're relying on what's called their PISA data. So every 3 years, the OECD gives a test of science, math, and reading skills to ninth graders, hundreds of thousands of ninth graders around this year. I think it's 80 plus countries around the world. So what I want to do is I want to show you combined performance on all those different tests with the amount of time kids spend on a computer in school. What happens to their score, their learning, as they increase computer use in school for learning purposes? Here was 2012. Oh, 2015. Yeah. 2018. Yeah. And they did a cycle in 2022, but that was due to COVID. That is horrible data. So the next data is going to come out in 2 weeks. We'll be able to see what the latest data shows. But what we see is kids who use computers primarily for learning, their learning is basically all computers, do on average 2/3 of a standard deviation worse than kids who never touch computers. But wait a second, I hear you saying. It looks like in 2015, that red line, moderate computer use does a little bit better than no computer use. So maybe we need a little bit of computer use in class. Not so fast. What people don't tell you is that in 2015, PISA went digital. So what you're seeing is not a boost to learning from tech use, which is why the red and blue lines are basically identical. What you're seeing is a penalty being paid by kids who never trained on a computer who are now being tested on it. So that's not proof that tech is good for learning. That's just proof that if you're going to have to take a test on a computer, you got to do a little bit of practice on a computer. Now, don't take that too far. That a lot of people then say, well, in that case, we need computers everywhere. No. It turns out you need about 3 20-minute practice sessions online to move your skills offline to online. So by all means, still learn analog. And if you know you got to take a test on Friday, then maybe on Monday, do a practice test. Tuesday, do another little practice session. Wednesday, do a practice session. You'll be fine. You don't have to overhaul school. You just need 3 20-minute blasts to get that skill transferred over. But okay, that's international. Let's bring it close to home. Let's use our NAEP data. So you probably know this. This is the considered our report card of the country. So NAEP, every 2 years, fourth graders and eighth graders around the US, all 50 states, take tests on reading and math. I don't know, so we can compare it to states. I guess that's something we do. I just want to show you what's going to happen here. So what I've done is I've taken every state's NAEP data from 1992 to today, and I've aligned it to when that state specifically went tech heavy. So this isn't tied to any one year like 2010 or anything. It is when did your state specifically adopt tech wide scale? When did it go from peripheral to central? When we map NAEP performance according to that standard, watch what happens. Fourth grade math, up, 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 go to tech, we're going down. Fourth grade reading, up, 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 tech time, going down. Eighth grade math, same thing. Eighth grade reading, same thing. To the point where now eighth grade reading is worse than it's ever been in the history of our country. But this is what happens when we adopt tech. We see scores on literacy, numeracy, science, all these things start to go down. Now, just to have some fun, I took a look at Connecticut NAEP data. In your country, your state didn't do as bad as most others. You're actually probably one of the better ones I've seen. So congrats. Your tech year was 2014. Just so you're clear, that was the year when smarter balanced computer-based assessments really went wide scale across Connecticut. So basically, in order to do statewide assessments, you needed some sort of digital infrastructure in your school. So we can mark that as the year that Connecticut went from tech peripheral to tech central. What happens to your fourth grade scores? This is combined across reading and math. Leading up to 2014, everything just seems to get a little bit better. Your golden years then, of course, are going to be 2009 and 2013. What happens? 2014 hits, and now we start going down. And of course, 2022 was COVID year, but notice post-COVID, we didn't really bring it up all that much. We're now doing worse than we were in 2003. So we're about as low. No, we are the lowest we've been this century. But that's okay. Let's take a look at eighth grades. Same thing. We're building up. Things are getting better. Things are getting better. Really, our peak, your peak in Connecticut was right around 2009, 2011. So you were dropping before that, but after 2014, the pattern just gets worse. 42, 41, 16, 8, 17. So again, we are doing worse than we've ever done in this century. Thank you very much. And you can start to see the decusation point. So, like I said, you guys are probably the better of the states. A lot of them get really bad, but you're doing all right. To which I hear you saying, oh, but yes, sir, correlation is not causation. Ah, touche. All test data is just correlative. We need causation. We need academic data. So let's take a look at academic research real fast. Now, academic data, by and large, we will present our findings using what's called an effect size. This is a single number that will tell you how powerful and in which direction our intervention, our study went. So typically, an effect size will go between -1 to +1. Positive numbers are benefit, like we're doing really good. Zero's neutral, we didn't have an impact. And negative numbers, we start to get harm. We've actually made things worse. So -1, zero's neutral, +1's the best you could ever do. When we look at all digital tech since 1962 to today, the effect size is positive 0.29, which is good. That means we're benefiting learning. We're over zero. This is good. Not so fast, my friends. It turns out when I said the average scale is -1 to +1 with zero being neutral, turns out that's true for every scientific field except for one, which has to act different. Education. In education, we don't use the same scale. Why? John Hattie, a researcher out of Melbourne, recently analyzed 350,000 effect sizes across all of education. What impacts learning? He found over 95% of them were positive. Everything works in education. Because learning is biological, you cannot stop it from happening. If you change your shoes, your kids will learn. If you wear a red hat, your kids will learn. If you lock your kid in a closet and take them out a week later, they will come out more cognitively advanced than when they went in. You can't stop learning from happening. So if everything has a positive effect size, we can't use zero as our baseline because everything then works. Do whatever you want. So what should our baseline be in education? Hattie says it should be around positive 0.42. He said that's the average of every effect size out there. Therefore, we're going to say that's average. If you want to be better than average, you got to be above this number. If you just look at year-on-year growth, what's your standard deviation year on year? It's about 0.45. If you ask the guy who invented the effect size measure, he'd say it's around 0.5. But let's be as nice as we can. Let's pick the lowest value, 0.42. Go back and look at that number. Does that look good now? Every other field that might be good in education, that's actually bad. That's suggesting we are doing worse learning than if we used other more traditional methods. And just so you know, I'm not cherry picking. That value represents over 21,000 studies. This is just, I didn't pick a cherry. I picked the whole tree. That's just what the data says. But let's get specific. Impact of digital tech on distance learning, 0.23. One-to-one computers, 0.16. That is now down to 0.12. Disadvantaged students using tech, 0.18. So much for closing those gaps. Literacy, 0.33. Mathematics, 0.33. Science, 0.24. Nowhere does tech appear to be very beneficial. Now, there are two bright spots when it comes to tech. One is intelligent tutoring. So this is when kids use a computer to drill problems. Like they're practicing math, and every time they get one right, the computer gives them a harder one. If they get it wrong, they get an easier one. So intelligent tutoring, drilling problems. The other is learning disorder remediation. This is when a kid with a specific learning disability uses tech to just drill an underlying skill. Like if you're dyslexic because you can't hear phonemes, you'll use tech to just listen to phonemes for hours on end. Now, the irony of this shouldn't be lost on anyone. Tech was promised to free us up from the shackles of traditional education. We would no longer have to learn stuff or memorize. We can go right into creativity and start inventing and changing the world. Isn't it funny that the only two places where tech appears to be beneficial is when you use digital technology to drill and kill basic skills? The one thing they promised us we'd never have to do with tech. Now, believe it or not, I think that says more about learning and how it works than it does tech, but I just always thought that was pretty ironic. Now, I want you to keep those two values in mind because we're going to come back to those in about 10 minutes. I'm going to show you something interesting that makes me question even those values. But okay, data. You're never going to win the tech debate with data. The data does not favor digital technology anywhere. That's why you never see ed tech vendors trying to sell you using data. They can't. It doesn't work. So the next thing they're going to try and do is spin the data in a way that makes it look good for them. The way to combat that is to now understand mechanisms. It's one thing to know that the tools aren't really working. It's another to know why. And once you understand why, then you're Teflon when people make arguments in favor of it. So why does tech not work? There are dozens of biological mechanisms why it's no good for learning. There are three intractable ones that I want to cover with you today. And I call these intractable because I said it doesn't matter how good tech gets or what they invent, these three will never be overcome. These battles are already done. Number one is here. I want to play a quick game with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my timer for 10 seconds. Now, when I say go, you're going to have two jobs for me. So you can just use your finger and you can write on your palm or you can write on the table or your knee. We don't need a pen and paper. We'll go analog for this. But what I'm going to do is when I say go, the first thing I want you to do is write out the first 12 letters of the alphabet as quickly as you can. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, up to L. When you're done doing that, I then want you to write out the first 12 numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds to see, can you do all of that? Can you give me 12 letters and then 12 numbers? Or let's see how far along that process you can make it. All right. And ready, set, go. Stop. All right. How'd you do? Now, if you're like most people, you did pretty good. Some of you will have finished. A lot of you will have been getting pretty close, like up to 7, 8, 9. All right. Brilliant. Let's play the same game again. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. You're going to give me 12 letters, 12 numbers, same exact game, except this time, instead of writing the letters and then the numbers, I want you to jump between the two. So first, I want you to write the letter A, then the number 1, then the letter B, then the number 2. Same thing. We're just doing 12 and 12. All we're doing is jumping. 10 seconds. Let's see what happens this time. All right. And ready, set, go. Stop. And how'd you do that time? Now, if you're like most people, you didn't get anywhere near as far that second time. Like most people only get about like 2/3 of the way through, maybe up to 6 or 7. But more importantly, how many of you started to get a bit confused? Like, look, it's just letters and numbers. But by the time you get up to E, all of a sudden you're going A, B, C, D, E, F, F, yeah, B, C, D, E, F, G. So wait a second. Why was that so difficult? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the wonderful world of multitasking. You can't do it. No human being in the world can do it. Multitasking is not a skill issue. It's not a software problem that says if I just practice hard enough, I can get this capacity. It's a brain problem. It's a hardware issue. So anytime you undertake a task, you have to set in your brain what's called the rule set for that task. It basically acts like a filter in your brain that determines what's relevant, makes it into your conscious awareness, what's irrelevant gets blocked out. The problem is you only have one attention filter slot in your brain. It's a little nugget here behind your left eye. So this means if you ever try and do two things at once consciously, you cannot do them simultaneously. The best you can do is start one, take that filter out, put in the new one, take that filter out, back to the old one. Now that swap takes time. It takes your brain about 0.2 seconds to make that jump, during which time your brain will go black. You process absolutely nothing. But more importantly, every time you swap that attention filter, your brain will also reset your memory. About the last half second of whatever you were doing gets tossed for good. It's a safety mechanism. Your brain assumes if you're jumping tasks that whatever you must doing must be irrelevant. You need 100% focus here to make this work, so you lose information. I ain't even going to pull this punch. That, by the way, is why you were getting confused. Once you get out of any simple pattern, you got to keep starting from scratch because your brain no longer remembers what it is you're doing. Multitasking, the single worst thing human beings can do for learning and memory. When you multitask, you will go slower, your accuracy will drop, and your memory will tank significantly. Now, why does this matter? There is an issue called primary function. Primary function basically says every tool has a story aligned to it. That when you pick up that tool, what is the first story that pops in your mind about how you should be using that tool? So think about a hammer, right? Like a hammer. Dozen things you can do with a hammer. You can scratch your back, pop a bottle cap, throw it at a bird, I don't know, screw something into the wall, the paperweight. Dozen things you can do with a hammer. But 80% of the time, 80% of us use a hammer to hit things. So as soon as I give you a hammer, you're going to activate that story and go, cool, what do you want me to hit? So what is the primary function of digital technology? When we sit a kid down with a screen and we say, time to learn, what is the first thing that pops into their mind about what they should be doing with this machine? Let's see if we can't find out. Here is the breakdown per week of how teens and tweens age 8 to 18 across the US use digital technology. These values were from 2023, so post-COVID. What do we got? Scrolling the internet, social media, 13 hours. Watching TV, videos, YouTubes, Netflix, all that, 11 hours, 45 minutes. Playing video games, 11:15. In-class work, 9 hours. Okay. 7.5 listening to music, 3.5 doing homework, 2 hours video chatting, 1.5 reading and writing, a whopping 1 hour creating actual content. So much for that creativity boost tech was going to give us. When you extrapolate this and you remember that school is only in session about 180 days per year, this means per year your kids will use digital technology for learning purposes about 450 hours, which is absolutely massive. Until you recognize they will use the exact same machine to passively consume rapidly switching media content for over 2,500 hours every single year. How are 80% of people spending 80% of their time using a tool? I think we just found our primary function. But I'll tell you what, that's a lot of words. Passive consumption of rapidly switching media content. That's a little gummy. Doesn't really roll off the tongue well. Is there another way we could phrase that? Oh, you bet there is. Multitasking. What is the one thing we just learned you cannot do if you want to learn? Multitasking. What is the one thing kids have spent literally thousands of hours every year training themselves to do on these machines? Is it any wonder then that when a kid sits down with a piece of tech at home to do either homework or studying, they make it on average 6 minutes before they start multitasking, after which time study is basically done. You're wasting your time. When kids sat down for live Zoom lessons during COVID, at the beginning of COVID, they were making it on average 15 minutes. By the end of COVID lockdowns, 2 minutes, which meant over half of our kids were logging on, waving at us, and immediately doing something else. When your kids use a computer in class with a teacher present, 24 to 38 minutes of every single hour, they will be off task multitasking. Now, I want you to recognize it's not because Gen Z is decrepit or Gen Alpha is morally wrong. It's a pure training thing. If you assume it takes 10,000 hours to master any skill, then after 4 years of being introduced to tech, kids have mastered one thing, multitasking on these screens, which is the one thing I can't have you doing if I now need you learning from those screens. So why is this intractable? Because in the battle of entertainment versus education, entertainment won. If computers only existed in the classroom, we might be able to temper some of this. But as soon as the computer entered the home, and more importantly, the pocket, it stopped being viewed as a learning tool. And no amount of trying to pretend that it is ever going to change it. Adults, we do not see these as learning machines anymore. They are entertainment machines. And the more we try and pretend otherwise, we're just wasting everyone's time. That will never be overcome, especially amongst the youngest kids. So, okay, the battle is over. The war is done. Tech is not seen as a learning tool, but what else is going on? Second, what I'd call intractable mechanism is this. I want to tell you a quick story about Eliza. So, believe it or not, the very first AI therapeutic chatbot was built in 1966. It was called Eliza. For as much as we think we're doing incredible stuff today, we've been doing this for decades. There's nothing new, just more data. Anyway, it worked exactly like you'd expect it to. You type in a prompt like, hey, I'm feeling sad. Eliza would say, why are you feeling sad? Oh, I got in a fight with my brother. Oh, why'd you get in a fight about? And you just go back and forth till you feel better. Now, almost immediately after Eliza came out, pundits said that's it for corporeal therapists. We do not need human therapists anymore. AI is going to take your job. Sound familiar? They said, we got now a tool that's scalable, that anyone can access. Sorry, therapists, quit while you're ahead. We now have changed the game. Well, cut to today. There are more human therapists alive today than at any other point in history, and they are killing it. By all measures, they are 3 times to 5 times better at treating basic symptoms of depression and anxiety than the strongest chatbot we have built to this day. And that's just depression and anxiety. Get up into higher order things, AI doesn't even come close. So why? What happened? Why did AI therapy never take off? Because everyone was looking at the wrong thing. The operative word in therapeutic relationship was never therapeutic. It was what? Relationship. It turns out the biggest predictor in whether or not therapy is going to work is the relationship a patient has with the therapist. And more specifically, the empathetic relationship. Some estimates say 80% of all therapeutic outcomes can be directly tied back to the empathetic relationship between the patient and the therapist. Now, why are we talking about this? Because do you think it's going to be any different in a classroom? One of the biggest drivers and predictors of learning we have is a strong student-teacher relationship with an effect size of positive 0.57. We are now in the clear of saying this is something we need to be doing. But relationship is a big word. What specific aspect of relationship seems to matter most? Is it genuineness? No, it's there, but it doesn't really seem to be a big push. Adaptability? We're getting there. Encouragement? Sure, that's good. And we're back. Within a positive effect size of 0.68, one of the highest, most consistent we have in education, the empathetic relationship between a teacher and a student drives learning. Now we can ask, what is empathy? Well, believe it or not, you don't have it. I don't have it. Nobody has it. Most people think empathy is a personality trait or some sort of personal emotion. Empathy is what we call a transpersonal emergent property. No one has it, no one is controlling it. It only exists when different pairs of biology come together. So what happens is if you and I start to empathize right now, what's going to happen is our biology is going to start to synchronize. In a very real sense, if we're empathizing, our hearts are going to start to beat at the same time. We're going to start to breathe in synchrony. We're going to start to blink at the same rate. If I could image our brains start to look almost identical. We can measure empathy. It's the synchrony between two or more pairs of biology. Now, again, you're not driving it, I'm not driving it. It emerges through biological interaction. We don't know the exact mechanisms. It's fun as heck to try and solve this, but we now know the driving force. Now, why would that boost learning? Well, think about it. If I'm a kid learning from a teacher, and in that moment I'm resonating with them, I'm no longer learning from them. I am thinking like them. I am in their head. We are making the exact same cognitive moves together. My understanding goes way up. Or flip it. Let's say I'm a kid learning and I start struggling. There will always be a wall you hit when you learn. In that moment, if the teacher is resonating with me, they're not just guessing my struggle. They know exactly why I'm struggling. And because they're an adult, they know exactly what it's going to take to pull me through that struggle. So from their standpoint, it boosts understanding. From our standpoint, going back to the student, it helps them stay motivated and push forward. That, by the way, if you ever wondered, the dropout rate for online learning still hovers around 85%. And that's your biggest reason why. Why? As soon as you're learning online, you've done this, you've started an online course or gone to an online school. As soon as it gets difficult, we quit. Why? Because there's no resonance to pull us through. You hit your wall, there's no motivation. It's that human to human contact that actually pulls you through. Now, why do we call this intractable? Empathy drives learning. Empathy is defined as the biological or the synchrony between two or more pairs of biology. What is one thing a computer absolutely does not have? Biology. By definition, you can never empathize with a screen. It is literally impossible. And if so, you start to see another biological mechanism whereby doing the same thing live versus doing it on a screen is not equivalent. You will learn more live than here because of the way biology works and functions. It's almost as if we've evolved 150,000 years to learn from other human beings. Oh, wait, we have. That is one of our superpowers. One thing that sets humans apart from any other animal is this synchronization ability. We do it better than any other animal. As soon as we bring in tech, we cut that ability off. Now, I want to point out, you will have kids reporting that they feel empathetic, especially towards AI. And the joke is, cool, feel it all you want. It ain't going to make a lick of difference because the mechanism isn't there. So for instance, if I show you a picture of a sun, you will feel subjectively warmer, but you will never get a tan because the mechanism by which the skin dies is just not in the picture. It's the same thing here. So it doesn't matter how much our kids say, I love it, I want to marry it. That's all fine. Those are emotions, do it. But once they say I'm empathizing with it, no, the answer is you are not. And you will never get the benefit to your learning from empathy because it cannot happen on this machine. Now, third intractable mechanism then is here. It's a concept called transfer. So when we talk about transfer in education, we're talking about how do you move skills between different contexts? How do you transfer your ability into new situations? So like, I'm glad my kid can do math in my classroom. I need you to be able to do math at home to balance your family budget or whatever it's going to be. So transfer, how do we move skills? It's kind of the gold standard of what we want from education. Two very important things to know about transfer. One is this. I want to tell you a quick story. So this is a story from an old physiology textbook from 1650. And it tells the story of this delivery man. So we got this delivery man. He's got this really expensive package. He's got to deliver it, but it's noon. It's a little bit hot. He's getting a little dusty. He thinks, I'm just gonna go have a quick beer. I'll deliver this. I'm just gonna have just one beer real fast. Dude ends up having more than one beer. He passes out. He wakes up the next day sober. He's feeling fine. But guess what he can't find? Guess what he lost from the night before? That package. He doesn't remember where the heck he put it. So he's going around town trying to retrace his steps. They said by the end of the day, they had 5 of his bosses trying to help him look for this thing. No one could find this package. Guess what they did to jog his memory? Got him drunk. As soon as the dude was drunk, he was able to walk him right to where he'd left the package the night before. Yeah, my bad, I put it over here. So what do we learn about learning and transfer from this man? We learn, not that, we learn that transfer is contextual. We like to think we learn clean. We do not. Right now, your memory for this session isn't going to be my words. It's going to be my words mixed with the feeling of the chair against your body right now. Whatever temperature is in the air around you, other things you might be hearing or smelling or seeing. Go inside. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you hungry? Are you tired? All of this will get tied up with what you're learning right now and will ultimately determine how you can access that learning in the future. So transfer is contextual. Where you do your learning will ultimately become part of what you are learning. Why does that matter? Don't worry about this. Because computers are a wickedly narrow context. I could not invent a more narrow context than a screen and a keyboard that never changes shape, never changes size, never changes dimension. I'm basically the same distance from it all day, every day. This means when you learn on a computer, your skills by and large will be tied to that computer. Now, when I say, can you do those same skills over here off the computer? The answer invariably is going to be, not really. And it's not because I didn't learn them, it's because I tied them to a very narrow context. But wait a second, I hear you saying, surely that sword is cut in both ways. If I learn online, I'm going to struggle to move it offline. But if I learn offline in this context, I'm going to struggle to move it online into this context. Touche, you nailed me. That is going to bring us to our second dimension of transfer. It's something called additive versus subtractive. Now, I want you to imagine you are a 16-year-old. And I am teaching you how to drive. And I'm going to teach you how to drive using a manual transmission. So we got like a 4 on the floor. We got our clutch. We're doing fine. Now you learn to drive really well. So let's say it's been 10 years. You're fine. I decide, you know what? I'm selling our car and I'm going to buy our family an automatic. Uh-oh, that's a new context. Do you think you're going to be able to transfer your skills from the manual to the automatic? Of course you are. Why? Because it's easier. You got to do less work. This is an example of subtractive transfer. Subtractive transfer says sometimes you learn in a way that is more complex than the way you need to perform. And in those instances, transfer is very easy to do. It's not automatic, but it is very easy. But flip it. Let's say you're 16 years old. I'm teaching you how to drive. I'm teaching you how to drive using an automatic. You get really good at it. 10 years later, I sell that car and I buy our family a manual. 4 on the floor, clutch, we're having a good time. Will you be able to make that jump? You will not. Why? Because you don't even have the basic skills. This is what we call additive transfer. Sometimes the context we learn in is easier than the way we need to perform a skill. And in those instances, transfer is basically impossible. You have to start from scratch to build up the basic knowledge to even make that thing work. Why are we talking about this? Because computers are easy. Nobody built a computer to make our lives harder. Computers literally exist to make everything easier. So this means when you learn on a computer, you are learning in literally the easiest, most frictionless, most consistent way humanly possible to learn. Now, when I say, can you apply those skills in the real world where everything is nuanced and the color of the lights change depending on the room you're in, and the feeling of the writing apparatus changes every time you write a new sentence? Can you move that skill? You can't. Why? That's additive transfer. You don't even have the basic abilities out here. But flip it. If you learn in the context, nuanced real world where everything is different, every time you do something, it's subtly different. You're always changing your position, the way you think. And now I say, can you apply that skill in the world's easiest setting? The answer is always going to be yes. That's going to be just fine. This, by the way, is why Gen Z is less digitally literate than millennials. We were never trained on tech. We were trained in the hard world. But then when you said, can you use tech? The answer was Yeah, we'll be fine with that. If I can do this, I can do that. But kids who are trained on tech can't seem to move it off. They're now dependent on it. By the way, Gen Z is now as low as Gen X when it comes to digital literacy. In Australia, they are now below Gen X. So when you're teaching your parents how to write emails, remember they're doing better than our kids are when it comes to this stuff. That's how this game works. That's the transfer problem. A good way to see this is think about this: handwriting. Handwriting is arguably the most complex motor skill humans learn. So if I know how fluent you are at handwriting, I can tell you how fluent you're going to be at typing once you learn how to type. It's not going to be automatic, but once you get there, it'll be fine. But that's only if you learn to handwrite first. Amongst populations where the kids learn how to type first, the correlation between typing and handwriting is zero, because typing is such a gross motor movement that now when we say, can you do this, the most fine motor skill in the world? The answer is no. I'm back to square one. That's the problem of additive transfer. So why do I call this intractable? Until somebody decides to make technology harder than the real world, so until they start making a GPS that is harder to use than a map, or a word processing system that is harder to use than simply writing, these tools will always be too easy to learn from. They might be good for production. That's why we call digital technology a production tool. They make it easy to produce things. But ease is not the defining characteristic of learning. And in fact, it is a sign that learning will not occur, at least not deeply. So until they make computers harder, which they never will, we'll always hit that transfer dilemma. And that's going to bring us back here. Remember earlier when I said the two bright spots of tech were intelligent tutoring and learning disorder remediation? Believe it or not, the very first intelligent tutor was invented in 1922 by a man named Sidney Pressey. So we've been doing this for over a century. He stopped making his teaching machine in 1929. Why? Why didn't he continue? Why didn't it change education? For the exact same reason iReady, Alpha Schools, IXL, the exact same reason those are not changing education. He already told us why 100 years ago. It's just no one pays attention. Pressey, tell us, why'd you stop making your machine? In successive runs through the machine, students did indeed learn very rapidly. Nice. But when I checked that learning by repeating some of the material verbatim, but in a little different context a week later, very little appeared left. Uh-oh. If the test was rephrased and in a different context, almost nothing seemed retained. What was he saying? He was saying it didn't transfer. We knew this for 100 years, so go back here. When we do the research that says intelligent tutoring and learning disorder remediation work at those effect sizes, guess where they're measuring that impact? In the tool itself. They are not measuring transfer. What I need to know is, cool, you're getting better at the program. I hope so. Are you getting better out here? And the answer to that in the few places we've looked is no. The transfer is very small on these things. So even in the cases where people say, well, we can use it for tutoring or remediation, I'm like, yeah, be very careful. If you're going to do that, you better have explicit transfer practices as well. If you're going to say do 30 minutes of online training a day, you better also do 30 minutes where you say, okay, let's take what you just learned and apply it over here. Let's go count cars in the parking lot. Let's see if we can't dissect this book together. You had better build transfer in if you're going to try and trust this machine to help boost learning. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck in the machine. Now, I want you to recognize, I got about I won't go forever. I'll just give you about 5-10 more minutes here, probably 5 more minutes. It's not all doom and gloom. When should we use computers? Here becomes your motto. Something is better than nothing. We're not idiots. When it comes to learning, something will always be better than nothing. If you've got a kid with a specific learning disability who literally cannot engage with learning without digital technology, of course you give them tech. We're not morons. But that doesn't mean everyone now gets it. That's like assuming because one kid needs eyeglasses to see the board, we now better give all kids eyeglasses. No, we can do that on a case-by-case basis. I think we're going to be fine. Procedural simulations. If you're an F1 driver and you can't shut down Monaco to practice your laps, of course, bring in tech. We're not idiots. Something is going to be better than nothing. Let's say there's some global pandemic and they force us to shut down schools. I know, will never happen. Of course, we go to Zoom and technology. Something will be better than nothing. But if you are fortunate enough to have the choice between two somethings, always pick the something that aligns better with the outcome you're trying to achieve. And if that outcome is learning, digital tech will almost never be that better something. So as much as you can, we log off. Do you think there's a difference when it comes to reading comprehension and development when we read hard copy versus digital screens? Of course there is. Which trumps the other? Hard copy trumps digital. Buy a printer, plant a tree, print everything. If you did nothing different in schools besides print everything out again, pedagogy is the same, curriculum is the same. They just have paper instead of a screen. Learning will go up. And I can tell you exactly why. We don't have time for the mechanisms, but it's biological. Do you think there's a difference when it comes to note taking or drafting an essay if we handwrite it versus type it? Of course there is. Which trumps the other? Handwriting trumps digital. Do you think there's a difference when we're learning math if we're using manipulatives like beads and pictures versus doing the exact same thing on a screen, moving beads on a screen? Of course there is. Which is better than the other? Manipulatives. Anytime you can take learning offline, take it offline. That is our one purview in school. If our goal is learning, anytime you can, you do that live and in person. That's when learning. Change nothing else. Just by being together, learning will go up. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't hit you with this real fast. AI. The tool nobody asked for, solving problems nobody had. Why do large language models exist? These are the stupidest things I think human beings have ever invented. I mean, think about it. There was a time back in the day, and I mean just like 10 years ago, when if you invented something, you had to prove to the world that it worked. You have and it had to solve a problem, by the way. You have a stain in your shirt, my product will get rid of that stain. Your lettuce is starting to wilt, my new fridge will keep it crisp longer. And by God, if my fridge doesn't keep it crisp, ain't no one buying my tool again. Along comes AI and we say, hey, what's this tool do? And their answer was, why don't you guys find out? They literally say, we do not know what this is for. We just did it as an experiment to see if we could do it. You tell us what it's good for. Well, mate, I never signed on to be a beta tester. No one's paid me any money. Why the heck would I ever test this for you? You tell me what it's good for. That's like, imagine if I invented a new drug and you said, what does your drug do? And I said, why don't we go give it to kids and we'll find out. Now imagine every government in the world scrambles to say, yeah, who can be the first to give it to kids? It's absolutely asinine. What if the answer is no one should be touching that drug? No one should be touching AI. Perhaps we should have started with the baseline. This is a pointless tool until it demonstrates efficacy, rather than starting from the baseline. This is the future of everything. Pump $1 trillion into it. And now we're going, what the heck was that all for? I don't know if you've noticed, this bubble's going to pop someday soon. I'm not even convinced we're going to have AI in the way we have it right now 5 years from now. It sounds like it's just going down the drains wickedly fast. But the one thing I want you to know about AI is this. If AI can be said to be anything, and I'm not even convinced of this, but if we can say it's for anything, AI is a tool for experts to make their lives easier. But a very important thing to remember is the tools experts use to make their lives easier are never the tools a novice should use to learn how to become an expert. The reason for that has to do with the difference between offloading and outsourcing. So I'm going to tell you a quick story, and this is where we'll kind of wrap it. My sister-in-law, so my wife's sister, is fit. She's a gym rat. She's always working out, one of those people. Her husband is not. That dude is large. He walks to the fridge. It's about as far as he makes it. They're a hilarious couple. I love them. One day, they decided to rent e-bikes, those motorized bikes, to tour around Melbourne, their city. Cool, so they're having fun. Now, as always happens, the bikes run out of batteries. In her case, it didn't matter. The bike ran out of battery. She just pedaled it home. She was doing what's called offloading. In his case, when the bike ran out of batteries, he didn't have any skills. He didn't have any knowledge. He didn't have any abilities. He couldn't ride the thing home. He had to call an Uber to drive him home. He needed another tool to save him from this tool. We call that outsourcing. Offloading is when an expert uses a tool to make their life easier. But the only reason offloading works is because their expertise allows them to vet the output at all times. They're basically running the machine. So think about like statistics, right? I'm really good at stats, but it would take me, say, 4 hours to do a stat set. Shoot, I could have AI do it for me in 4 seconds. But the only reason it works is because as soon as AI spits out a number, I can immediately go, yep, that's correct, off we go. Or, oh, no, that's wrong. Oh, wait a second. Did I type in something weird? What test are you doing? What's going on here? My expertise makes it work, so it's considered offloading. You give that exact same tool to a kid. They type something in, it spits it out. They don't know anything. They don't know what they typed in. They don't know what processes happened. They don't know what procedures happened. When it comes out, the best they can do is copy it, paste it, hand it to you, and see if you smile or not. Through that process, they will not have learned facts. They will not have learned skills. They will have learned dependency on a machine. So we cannot, and I don't know why we do this. In no other realm do we confuse adults for kids. When we talk about drugs, when we talk about driving, when we talk about walking to school by yourself, we are very clear that there's a difference between kids and adults. But as soon as tech enters the equation when it comes to schools, we start treating kids like mini adults. We're like, oh, I do this as an adult in my job, therefore my kid needs to do it. Mate, as an adult, I don't use floaties to swim. Do you think that means I shouldn't give floaties to my kid? They are learning how to become an adult, but we treat them like an adult. And that is one of the biggest mistakes we make. And that's where we mistake production for learning. As adults, we are producing. As kids, they are learning. And that is a different ballgame. And the tools, the same tools we use, should not be the same tools they use. And somebody said the other day, well, I guess we got to explicitly teach them like AI literacy. What? AI literacy? AI. You mean that box you type words into? AI is literally a box you type words into. Oh yeah, we really need to spend months of curriculum time on that. It's a box you type words into. Surely the important thing of AI is what are you typing in that box? And all of that comes not from training on a tool. That comes from a general K through 12 education. That comes from learning how to think through knowledge, from deep understanding of fields. So now when somebody says, are you ready to use AI? Yes, because I have questions that I need addressed. I have something specific I want to do with it. I've been studying the brain for a very long time. Probably the most important thing I've learned is this. It takes human beings about 3 years to learn how to speak, but it takes us decades to have anything meaningful to say. When we teach kids on tools, we are teaching them how to speak. That's not hard. Tool training takes days, maybe weeks. But having something to say does not require training on a tool. That requires the kind of education we have always favored in this country. I'm not teaching you history because I expect you to become a historian. I'm helping you build a knowledge base so that you know how to interact with the world around you. Now you bring in the tool when you're ready to do something. I'll leave you with this. Sorry, you could probably tell I hate AI. I could do this all day, every day. One final idea is people always ask me, when is the right time to bring in a digital technology? And the answer is when you no longer need it. When you know the skill, then you can use the tool to make that skill easier. If you know how to do arithmetic, now you can start using a calculator. If you know how to write an essay and structure an essay, now you can use a word processor. The tool is not the skill. The tool is a means by which you exercise your skill. But when we mistake the tool for the skill, we waste our time teaching on this and they never develop anything out here. So just remember, now you're going to get this. Your kids are going to ask you, why do we got to learn this? We did this when we were in the 90s all the time. Why do I got to learn? I'll never use this in the real world. Oh, why do I got to learn this? Whenever your kid asks that question, here's your answer. Don't try and invent a world where they're going to need it. They probably won't. But learning compounds. That's what learning does. You don't learn arithmetic because you're going to use arithmetic in your real world. You use arithmetic because you cannot do algebra unless you have that locked down. And then you learn algebra because you cannot succeed at trig until you have locked algebra down. Learning always compounds until you get to the level where you finally hit a skill where you go, that's what I want to do. That is what I need in my life. Now, most human beings don't recognize the learning process. So as soon as they get to that skill, they will say, why didn't school focus on that skill? Why didn't they just teach me that over the last 12 years? Because we couldn't. If we had jumped right to that skill, you would never have understood it. You wouldn't have been able to make any sense of it. You wouldn't have been able to use it. Learning compounds. We built the staircase for you to get there, and you just forgot the journey it took to make that happen. That's why when Sir Ken Robinson so famously said school kills creativity, the only time I got to talk to him, I said, well, it certainly didn't kill yours. So am I meant to believe that you're this creative in spite of what you learned? Or do you think you're only this creative because of the process you've gone through and you just forget how important that process is? Because if you want to see something truly kill creativity, go to a country where kids don't go to school. Watch what happens there. You're not getting creativity there. You're not getting a lot of growth or development there. School is essential, at least the way we used to do it. And so I just think we got to think more about what is going to help learning and development and start realigning it according to that. So, all right, I'm so sorry for going so long. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. If you got to disappear, by all means, you're never going to offend me. Go do your thing, but I'm happy to answer questions. I'll stick around longer if need be, but the floor is all yours. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cooney Horvath. There's a ton here. I just want to give a plug based on some, we've gotten tons of questions, which were all great questions. And, there is some folks who are fully bought in, some folks who are skeptical, wanting to learn more. I can't recommend actually reading this book enough because it goes way more in depth than, of course, we could do in 45 minutes on all of these concepts. There's 67 pages of references to all the studies that are cited here and all the data. So if you're really interested in the data and the statistics, it's here for you.
And
I
there's
want to kick it
a
over.
new version of the book coming out next week that has 112 pages of references. So if you really
There
like
you go.
references, they're coming your way.
We got questions of people who wanted references, and so they are there for you, but I don't want to
Yep.
waste your precious time right now going through those. So I'm going to kick it over to Emily really quick for folks who want to know, what can I do right now? Because I'm worried about what's happening in my child's school. I want Emily to address that. So folks feel like they have some action items when they leave here before we get to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Representative Leeper, Representative Berger Cervallo, Senator Maroney, as well as thank you so much, Dr. Horvath, for your leadership in this space, and Dr. Horvath, especially for sharing your expertise on screens in schools. I highly recommend The Digital Delusion. It's an easy read. It's a great resource. I gave a copy to my super and the members of my Board of Ed Curriculum Committee. And thank you all for joining us. I'm just a mom who, in speaking with people in the community, learned that there are a lot of us that are concerned with screens and technology in our schools. So tonight I will be brief and pointed. You have the power to limit screens in your schools by using your voice. And I'm going to tell you what I think, who I think you should address and action that you can take. So first, who should you address? Your superintendent and local board. Why? Pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes Title 10, those are the local leaders who have the authority to decide what, if any, educational technology is in your school. By statute, those local leaders can enter into contracts with technology vendors regarding applications, platforms, student data and privacy, and more. So it is important to communicate directly with those people who make the decisions. What action can you take? Let those decision makers know what you want for your child in school. It's actually easy. You can send a general email. You could set up a meeting, but what I would encourage everybody on this call to do is to write an opt-out letter and send it to your super and your local Board of Ed. Dr. Horvath's book has a brilliant opt-out letter. You can modify it. You can use it as it is. You can use a different template, or you can write your own. Will it work? I would think so, since we're all stakeholders as parents, teachers, taxpayers supporting the school budgets that include this technology, and as voting constituents of these district leaders who are making these decisions. But we won't know until we try. And the point is, they actually need to hear your voice, all of our voices, in order to effectuate change. So when reaching out, please be mindful that the ask is to reverse course and it may present challenges, but also be mindful that persistence is key. Time is of the essence when it comes to our kids' learning, and we just can't afford to wait. Last, if you'd like more info, more opt-out templates, info on Connecticut law on ed tech and student privacy, or simply join a group of like-minded parents to ask questions, share strategies, and learn from others who are focused on less tech, more learning, I'd invite you to join our Facebook group at the Connecticut chapter of OK to Delay /Distraction-Free Schools, even if you're not in Ridgefield. It takes a village, and we can be that village. And I'll drop our group email in the chat. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for that, Emily. That's great. And we'll make sure we send that template letter out to everybody who registered as well. All right. So first question. In your book, you touch on why allowing students to access their phones during passing periods and lunchtime effectively eliminates the benefits of the schools banning phones. Yeah. This is a proposal we often hear. Can you discuss why you think this is not a balanced approach?
Yeah, the data is pretty clear that when schools have soft policies, which basically says no cell phone during class, but you can use it between classes or at lunch, at recess, you see no real change in learning, in well-being measures, in development. Everything stays the same. It's only in schools that have hard bans. You will not, from bell to bell, we do not see a computer, a phone. If we see it, it's ours. Sorry. You got to be hardcore with it. Now, why is it? A lot of our learning, and I won't go too deep into mechanisms, but a lot of our learning happens when we stop. A lot of the processes by which the brain locks down memories, starts to bin learning together into coherent concepts, can only happen when we stop and allow the brain to enter into what's called default mode network. Now, how do we get there? You go for a walk, you kick a ball, you talk to your friends, you go to your locker, you make fun of each other, you punch each other in the arm. All of that stuff is low cognitive effort, which means your brain has time to actually lock learning down. But when class ends and you immediately access a phone is a very high cognitive environment. Your brain never gets the chance to enter into those modes. Learning will start to go down. So it's not just a distraction in class. That is a big issue. It's because of the way learning happens, because of the way high order skills like creativity occur in the interstitial periods. Phones interfere with all of that as well. So my favorite stat, and again, this stat is not reference. This is just totally personal. So take it as an anecdote. But I've worked with a ton of schools that have had policies and reneged on them. After a couple months, they said, this isn't working. Let's just don't worry about it. I don't know of a single school in the world, I'm sure that they exist, I just haven't seen them yet, and I've been asking for years, that has banned cell phones and then gone back to use them later. Once they're gone, everyone says, damn, why didn't we do that earlier? I don't know of a single school that's banned them and said, you know what? It was better when kids had those phones. Let's bring those back in. It just hasn't happened. Again, maybe it has somewhere. I welcome anyone to tell me. I just haven't seen it. So yeah, it's not just about disruption. It's because of learning.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Amy?
Yeah, I want to jump in. One of the first questions, first of all, thank you for all of that. Even
No
having
worries.
seen you speak before, so much of this was that I was furiously taking notes. And in fact, one of the things that I was originally going to ask, you answered, but I think it really bears repeating. And that was how much time does a student need to be on a computer in order to be able to take the test? And I heard you say 20-minute practices are all that's needed to get the computer skills. Is that correct?
Yes, I published a Substack that looks at the data into that as well. So if you go to my Substack, there's one that's, I think it's called "Do Kids Need Computers to Take Computerized Tests?" and it will do lay out all that data there.
Okay. So I'm going to cheat and jump to my next question then, since you
Yeah.
thank you for that. And this is one that I hear a lot in my district, and I think it's a fair question, and it comes from people who are supportive of the concept here, but their concern is for districts that have made very large financial investments in ed tech. What do you say to transitioning back? What do you say to the cost? What do you say to, the waste? What do you got?
It's sunk cost fallacy. Is if you know you're doing something wrong, it is a cognitive bias to continue to do it simply because of what you have already wasted on your investments in it now, which is one of the worst things we can do, but all human beings do it. So I totally recognize it. We've already come so far down the track, we can't turn back now. But where's the data that track has gone well? Like, I mean, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I just published another article this morning. Maine was the first first state, first system in the world to introduce one-to-one computers in 2002. Since that date that they introduced one-to-one computers, they have dropped from the top percentile in the nation to their fourth graders are now in the bottom quartile of the US. And we've had this data since they started the laptops, and they just refuse to stop. They keep saying, we'll make it better. Give us one more year. You've basically wasted an entire generation of kids. So I hear you. We've made a lot of infrastructure moves. We've made a lot of decisions. That is not reason enough to sacrifice our kids' learning because we don't want to look bad, because our ego's a little big. And I think the good news here is when you make this move, you will save so much money. Most districts don't know how much they're wasting on tech until they do an audit. And then when they go back, like I was working with a school in Australia, They're like, we can't afford to print everything out. Do you know what the printing costs are? And so we calculated it was around $175,000 a year. Then we did a tech audit. They were wasting over $1 million every year on subscriptions for programs no kid had touched in 3, 4, 5 years. I'm like, there you go. I just saved you $800,000. Enjoy. It looks scary, but the good news is by going analog, we don't need new infrastructure. Usually when you make a change, you have to build infrastructure for the change. If all we're doing is going back to what we were doing 20 years ago, the infrastructure is already there. It never left. So we're going to save a lot of money on that move. It's just about, don't worry about saving face. Don't worry about, and believe me, people will respect you a lot more if you say, mea culpa. I screwed up. I didn't know this would happen. We're going to make amends versus just continuing to pretend that everything's okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
James, I think you're up.
Great. Thank you so much. And you did touch on this in fantastic presentation. I like so many of the things I'm going to have to quote later on. I like the 3 years learning to speak, but decades to have anything meaningful to say. So many of the points you brought up. And I think one of them is, the tool is not the skill. It's the means by which you exercise the skill. And so, AI is a tool, right? And you said it should be used by experts. I said that. And one of the things that we've heard is that, or that I've heard somewhere, is that the future is in checking and being able to check when the AI is right and to know. But how do you get there if you don't know what good looks like? So I'm going to change the question a little bit, is not just why don't you think AI has a place in our schools, but I want to flip that to, if people need to have these skills first, right? The tool is not the skill, before they're exercising them. And you need to learn what's good, right? And you need to learn critical thinking, I think is important. How would you then recommend that AI would be integrated into the curriculum? And when would you allow students to start using that?
That type of question assumes that it needs to be there. Because it exists, it needs to be there. I start from the assumption why it shouldn't need to be there. I invented something yesterday. Do we need to shove that in schools? The answer is no. Yeah. Why would we? Because it has the word intelligent in it. Who cares? If we start from the baseline of this tool is irrelevant, it's not useless, it's not meaningless, it's just irrelevant until it proves itself effective. Then we get to stop guessing on use cases. It's no longer up to us to try and make predictions about, well, where could this be good? It's up to the developer of the tool to run the research to prove to us it will be effective in these contexts under these circumstances with these students. That has always been the role of developers in the past. You have to prove your tool to me, and then I will be the one to decide whether or not to use it. But we've somehow switched to, we need to somehow invent a way to shoehorn this thing in. I don't see, there's a whole group of schools around the US, and now they're going into Europe as well. Classical schools. They're back to classic. We're going to study logic. We're going to study the classics. These kids will never touch AI, and I promise you they will be better around AI than kids who were taught explicitly how to use it in school. It doesn't need to be there. Just because it can do cool things. Somebody said that the other day. Well, it's here. You can't put it back in the tube. Heroin is here. I don't think anyone is saying we need that in schools. Just because something exists doesn't mean it needs to exist in front of our kids at school. This is where we get to say, what are we trying to achieve in these four walls? What context does that require for us to achieve that? And if a tool doesn't meet that context, don't worry about it. I see no problem saying we just don't touch it. And to be fair, will kids use it? Of course they will. That doesn't mean we don't ban it. My school banned cigarettes. I still went out behind the wood shop and smoked a cigarette. But you know what I didn't do? I never did it in class because it was expected and understood that in these contexts, I'm going to have to think and act a different way. So I've got no problem that saying, yeah, kids will use AI while simultaneously saying, but it won't exist in schools. I don't see that being a contradiction.
Great. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Here's one question we got from the audience. You're arguing the teacher-student relationship is the active ingredient. I agree. But most classroom tech is a supplement to a present teacher, not a replacement for one. Is your objection to technology, or specifically to technology replacing human instruction? Because those point to very different policies.
Yeah, it's both. If you, and we have the data for this too now. If you don't use tech at all, you learn up here. If you use tech as a supplement to your learning, you learn a little bit less. If you use tech as a replacement for that learning, you learn the worst. So you still see that same, it's tech itself is just not great to learn from. So if you're in a classroom with a teacher and the teacher says, let's all use tech to supplement my learning, why? You're right there. I'm right here. Use a worksheet. Let's do group work. Let's do something on the board. There are other ways to do that that facilitate learning better, adapting another pedagogy. So I guess then the argument would be, what about using tech at home for homework and things like maybe that's the supplement that might work. But even in those instances, learning works better offline. One thing I always tell parents is they say, what's the first thing I can do to help my kid is buy a printer. Never let when it comes to learning, by all means, when it comes to fun and gaming, tech away. When it comes to learning, whether that's homework or a reading for class or a worksheet they got to do, just print it out. Learning will go up due to the medium. So I would say, yeah, I'm very much against it replacing humans, but I'm also now if you're talking about now here's where tech is good. And so this is probably the best thing I will say all night. When I'm talking tech, I'm talking student-facing internet-connected devices. If you have a device that the teacher is driving, totally different ballgame. If the teacher opts to use tech and they are working, like I just showed you guys slides. I did PowerPoint all night with you, but I was running it. I choose what happens where and when. If a teacher is running tech, different ballgame. Maybe that's what you mean by supplementing it. But if a teacher is just deferring to tech for practice and things like that, there are other ways to do that.
I appreciate that distinction. Thank you.
No worries. I probably should have said that right at the beginning.
I
Sorry.
also will just recognize, like, you have very generously given us until 8:30, and I am so happy to continue to ask you questions until then, and
Yeah.
recognize maybe not everybody in attendance will hang with us that long, but again, this will be recorded. So thank you. All right,
No
Amy.
worries.
I also need to apologize in advance. My dogs may start barking because I hear my neighbors, whose mother is actually on this webinar. So we're all okay. I promise the dogs are in the house. Um, so one of the questions that came, I would like to assign research projects, and I find that Google and other search engines are horrible tools to facilitate identifying credible sources,
Yeah.
thanks to aggregation and AI. I've encouraged using the textbook, but what else would you recommend? Caveat, we do not have a school librarian. So what's the alternative?
This is where structure. So I assume in most cases, when it comes to research, that is one of the skills we are trying to establish. So we go back to pedagogies that basically say, we are doing it for you. I'm going to give you a packet of pre-prepared material. Some of it's going to be good, some of it's going to be bad, some of it's going to be primary, some of it's going to be secondary. Our job is going to be to work through this. So basically, this is where we see that. I always feel bad when I talk about this because it makes it seem like I'm mean or I don't care. But I've had thousands of students in my life. I've been surprised 3 times in my life. And it's not because my students are bad, it's because I'm teaching them. It's when I assign an essay, I know what you're going to say. I need you to say that so that I can teach you the next thing. And when I assign that essay, I already know what you're going to do. As a teacher, I'm always 10 steps ahead of you. And that just gives me the structure. So it makes it appear to the kids as though they are doing research, when in actuality, no, I've curated your entire life. Is that mean? No, that's just a recognition that they don't know what I know. And the quickest way to get to what I know is this path. I've already laid it out for you. So I think in those instances, that's where as much as we can, we drive that. We figure out what would be the best things for them to see, to not see, to counteract that. Here's a false example. Did you catch that? All that we can build in. As they get older, if it becomes more, they're clear on this and they're already good on it. I don't know if I'm 100% with you. Google used to be an absolute dream. It just isn't anymore. So I don't know. I use Google Scholar. I don't know if you have heard of that. But it's basically Google that only looks at academic research. And so long as you know how to parse academic research, probably the best way to make sure you're getting to real data and primary sources as opposed to whatever somebody put on a blog post. So if you do need tech, maybe that might be a good way to go, but I don't know.
I took an online course 10 years ago, and 10 years ago they were talking about Google, and that I believe it was called Google Scholar at the time, or it was some variation of that. And it was, I actually don't remember much else from that course, except
But you got
for
that.
the myth of multitasking. We went through that. So I do remember that. So thank you for
Yes.
bringing that back and making me feel like it was just days ago. So thank you so much. I think James is up next.
No worries. He's looking up the question.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. So I think, one of the questions I was going to ask you, I think we've decided I'm not going to ask that one, but instead I'm going to look at one of the questions that have come in, I guess, from several of the parents. How does outside the classroom use of digital devices, from video games to digital art classes to reading on a device, impact the cognitive load and learning within the classrooms?
Exactly what you'd expect. Harm, harm, harm. None of it's good. Um, and this was something I was taught. I mean, eh, small amounts of anything are fine. It's excessive amounts of anything, of social media, of smartphones, of video games, that will bleed into the classroom and start to negatively impact how they then interact and learn in the classroom. So it ain't good. But I think the biggest problem is the outside world and the inside world of school have bled together. The biggest mistake we've made in education over the last 15, 20 years was we've tried to serve a public. But school is not there to serve a public, it's there to create a public. I am not here to say, what do you need now? We will make sure kids can do it. We are here to say, what do we want from the future? And how do we build those kids today? Um, and so what happened was, as schools tried to serve the outside world, we allowed tech into the school. We allowed more bleed. We allowed kids to act inside schools ways they act outside of schools, to dress ways in here that they dress out there, to use language in here that they use out there. That was a mistake. If I can recommend one thing, there's a Substack called The Walled Garden by Andrew Cantor-Rudy out of Canada. It's probably the best Substack I read. And he's just making that basic point that within school, we need to reestablish a very clear systematic context. That's acknowledging that, yeah, outside of these walls, we've never been able to say what kids do. If they decide to go home and video game, that is not our purview. If they decide to go home and their parents give them whatever the heck, go for it. But we do know that inside these walls, here are the rules, here are the behaviors, here are the consequences, here are the actions, and we stick to that. That is the only way we can start to retrain kids to act differently in school. Will it absolve everything that's happening outside of school? No, but it will start to bring back students in the context and the structure we understand, and it will help them start to read and focus. They can start to rebuild their memory, at least within these four walls. So, who is it? John Gottman, the guru on all relationships. One of his 7 principles of an effective relationship is solve the solvable problems. I think sometimes in education we get overwhelmed because the whole world is changing, and people say we can't, if we take computers out of school, but they're going to see it all out there, and that's until we change the entire structure of civilization, we'll never be able to fix school. That's a non-tractable problem. Yes, that's a problem. It ain't going nowhere, and we cannot solve it. So what do? We focus on the things we can fix, and in our instances, it's what happens in our 4 walls within our classroom. And that's where the walled garden comes in and says, how do we restructure? And if you think about it, see, that's been the key of all social structures over the last like 50 years. You walk into any hospital in the world, you will immediately know you're in a hospital. Why? Because it's structured for one very specific thing. Anything that doesn't go along that structure does not exist there. You walk into a church, you know it. You walk into a library, you know it, because they are structured very highly for one outcome. We need to redo that when it comes to school and learning. There's that old joke too. Got me thinking. Like somebody said, if Rip Van Winkle woke up today, he would see the airplanes and be shocked, and then he would see the motorized cars and be flabbergasted. Then he'd walk into his school and say, "Yeah, I know what this is." And everyone says that's an argument why school should change. I'm like, dude, no, if Rip Van Winkle walked into a hospital, he would know. If he walked into a courtroom, he would know. If he walked into a library, that's just a sign that you have established your reason for existing and you know how to achieve it. The reason why school looks the way it does, it's been looking like that for thousands of years. I have etchings, this is one of the things I collect, from 700 that show lines of monks sitting in rows writing while somebody talks to them. We've been doing it forever because it works, not because it's old fashioned and we need to change it. And we've seen it every 20 years, somebody tries to reshift education, and we always come back to the same structure because there is a way to learn. There's a way to learn best. And anytime we try and change that, we will inevitably fall right back into the same pattern where we go, no, you know what? It was happening better the way we did it there. So Rip Van Winkle will recognize school. Good. I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's bad.
I appreciate this. And I really appreciated your chapter 7, which is that what good is being more efficient and having like flashier output if we're losing all the valuable learning along the way. So for anyone out there who is so inclined, chapter 7 will leave you thinking. But back to the data, we got a question. How do you know that it's the educational technology that impacts the test scores and not the fact that students quickly click through tests that has the negative impact? How do you know that the data you're using is actually measuring learning?
So that is, you don't. That's the problem with correlation and test scores. So what do? With test scores are all correlative. So you bring in academic research to try and explain the patterns. And that's where you start to get causation. But you're absolutely right. But think about it. I mean, that in itself is a problem. The fact that tech makes it easy pedagogically to just click buttons until you get to the end, that is a problem. That is not a thing that a book allows you to do. So we start to see that the tool itself really is the negative impact. But what you can do then is you can then start to compare tests that were taken digitally versus hard copy. Oh, there are ways around this statistically that you can make it a little sexier. But I think the most important thing to recognize is these tests that we're using, we have data from hundreds of thousands of students. This isn't a class of 10 kids. This is, if you actually look at just the PISA data I've used for the latest article, we're looking at 4.2 million unique students. So the idea then with that big of a data set is if you have one kid in one category who's just clicking through, you will also have one kid in another category that's just clicking through. They will even each other out. If you have one kid who's taking it seriously here, you will also have one kid who's taking it seriously here. They will even each other out. Because of the size of the data set, all of those little minor things really start to kind of come out in the wash, and you're stuck with a lot more just specific, all things being equal, these kids do this, these kids do this, and it seems to be pretty solid. And I would say this too is we bin differently. So remember those graphs. We're looking at kids who use tech. No, kids who use tech up to an hour, up to 2 hours, up to 3 hours. You can bin and kind of see how things are going. I think that feeds back into it too. But I think the most important thing to remember about correlation, the argument that correlation isn't causation is the most overused and misunderstood. Because the problem is if you have a causation, you will also have a correlation. So when people say correlation isn't causation, they're trying to wipe away data. But no, correlation is the clue that there is a causative agent here. There might not be, but my God, that's the best clue we got. If all correlation points in the exact same direction across contexts, across year levels, across subjects, across ages, across countries, across time, every single data set points in the same direction, that's a very good signal that we're not looking at correlation. We need to dig deeper. And that's what the ed tech thing is. There's not one coherent data set that says tech helps learning. Every data set we have shows the exact same negative direction, which aligns with the academic research. So yeah, there are other explanations. We can account for SES, we can account for within school effects, we can account for teacher effects. Even when we account for all that, we see the same patterns. So that's where just stats gets fun, basically. But I like that you're thinking that deeply about it. That's really cool.
I'd also offer, we now are hearing back from four-year colleges that 20 to 30% of their incoming freshmen are in remedial courses because they haven't learned enough to be prepared to do what freshmen used to be able to do. And we hear the same thing, honestly, from the workplace, that they're getting college graduates who are not prepared to meet the rigor of the workforce. And I won't take any more time, but I think there's,
No, I love
or
it.
unless you want
People
to.
say, oh, no, I love it because people will say, we need to keep training them for work. And the big joke is they go to work and we're like, do your kids not know how to use Excel? And employers are like, no, that's all they know how to do. The only thing they know how to do is use tech. They don't have anything to think through anymore. And that's what we used to do. I was thinking too about the tech and the pedagogy and kind of there's a good law. It's called the law of least effort. This isn't a law of humans. People think it's a cognitive bias. It's not. It is everywhere, even non-biological systems. If there are two ways to achieve a goal, the same goal, the universe will always select the way that is easier. It's a way to save energy. Humans, we are no different. The law of least effort. You give me two ways to do something, we will take the easiest route out. Learning requires you to take the hard route. So one of the things we are doing K through 12 is we are forcing kids to do that which the universe does not want to do. And that requires a lot of support. That requires a lot of guidance. That requires a lot of encouragement. That's what we are good at. When we replace all that with a screen, like we were talking about ChatGPT this morning or AI, and somebody said, well, yeah, kids could use AI to have a Socratic dialogue and deepen their thinking. Law of least effort. Do you genuinely think that's what a kid is going to do? If a machine says you can have me have a debate with you, or I could just give you an answer, 95% of people are saying, just give me the answer. I do it. You do it. It's not just kids. It's what we do. So even these arguments that all these tools could be so good, I don't care. It's what will actually happen. Did you know, technically, you could pop your car into neutral and push it to work every morning in order to build physical fitness. You absolutely could do that. Of course, nobody is going to do that. Why? Because it's the law of least effort. Why would I do that when I could just get in the car and drive it? Or if I wanted to work out, there's an easier way to do it than pushing my car. So remember, just because people say you could use these tools in these ways, I got to live in reality. And ain't no one going to do that. And the data says they ain't doing that. So all your wishful thinking, I don't begrudge you that, but that ain't good enough for us.
I think maybe we'll have Amy do the last question because I think it's a really relevant one that people, by and large, are probably concerned about, and then we'll wrap up.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jen. My work in the school district. Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
We have a double guest. We have Ariel and Teddy today.
Hello, Ariel and Ted.
Welcome.
Thank you for
Hello.
sharing your dad with us. He's a very cool guy. So really quickly, all of the tech that is used to support kids with 504s and IEPs, this is where I worked. This is what I experienced most in public schools. I know there are fears from parents about if tech goes away, does that tech go away too, or what is the or?
Yeah, I think this is, again, something is better than nothing. There will be kids who absolutely need tech to learn. Of course, we're going to keep that. And the idea isn't we scrap tech. The idea is we have a computer lab. We have a computer cart. The tech is still there. It's teacher driven. It's not the default. It becomes a choice that we actually have to make. So by all means, we're not going to take away a kid's hearing aid. That doesn't make any sense. Hello. But I think the important thing to remember about that is with 504s and stuff, if you work in schools, you'll notice that has gone from like 15% of the population to, in some cases, 50%. There's a lot of school districts I work at where 50% of kids have it. There is no way in biological heck 50% of kids have learning disorders. I am home. I'm going to come in a second. So what we're seeing is a lot of people willing to game the system. So, and that's where the problem is some people's solution is just another person's crutch. And the person who needs it, there's another person who's just using it to avoid the effort. And how do we differentiate between those two? And I'll also say then too, for the kids who are using tech for learning purposes, remember, there's a difference between learning and remediation. And you can only serve one master at a time. So let's say I have a kid with dyslexia. But we're reading something and I need them to understand what we're reading. The goal of the lesson is comprehension. I know they're not going to be able to do it because they can't decode the words. So what do? You get to listen to it. Don't worry about the book, put it away. I just need you closing your eyes and listening to it. In so doing, they will comprehend, but they will never learn to decode. So when it comes time to remediation, to say, I need you to actually learn how to read, we will take away the headphones and we will say, get the book and let's read. But when we do that, we will not now test them on comprehension. We won't ask them what they read because they're so focused on how to read. That becomes the goal of that lesson. So when we can differentiate between learning and remediation, that's when we can figure out when will a tool be useful versus when is it just going to stop them from developing what we need them to. And then that will also help us home in on what is it we're literally going to be looking for at the end of this task. But I think we are going to have a problem. I'll try and dig up an article a friend of mine in the UK wrote because they're having the same problem. They've run out of money for kids with learning disabilities because so many kids without them have 504 as their version of it that they don't have the money for the kids who genuinely need the help. It's just become a giant game. Oh, go say hi. It's Lulu. But they're seeing the same thing in the UK where the system is being gamed so much that now they can't actually help the people who need the help. And I think that might be something that's coming down the pipe for us as well that we got to keep a real eye on. 50% of kids with a specific learning plan, come on. That just sounds to me like 50% of parents are figuring out, I can get my kid extra time on a test, do it. And doctors are more than happy to diagnose someone with ADHD, even if we know that they don't have it. I'm throwing us under the bus with that one. So that's going to be the next big move, maybe.
Well, I appreciate that the recognition that there is meant to be nuance in whatever the approach is, whether or not it is a legitimate diagnosis is certainly not for me to jump in and say, but I think to talk about how a teacher will differentiate the learning depending on what that goal is, I think is the most important thing. And it reminds me of being a kid in the 70s, and I just dated myself hardcore. And with that, I'm handing it off.
Handball over.
Thank you so much. I think you gave everyone a ton to think about, probably distill in our quiet time when we're not doom scrolling. And we'll come back to it, right? People are going to grab different parts of what you've shared. And I think also people are looking for what can they do? How can they learn more? And of course, read the book. And then also engage with your board of ed and your superintendent. Have a conversation with your child's teacher. If you feel like you don't understand how much time your child is spending on a screen, ask your principal. You might have to ask for a tech audit from your district. These are all things that parents have a right to know and also have the ability to ask for. I think also reach out to your legislators. This is certainly going to be something that we're talking more about. The State Board of Education actually just charged our State Department of Education with creating parameters around screens in school. So we now have a framework for having this conversation in a more detailed way. I've been engaging with superintendents for years and years, but specifically on this for the past 9 months. And we're now working more in earnest, trying to figure out what is that right balance. And we want intentional technology where there is a specific learning objective, but passive technology, I think the data is very clear, right? That is not helping further the objectives of school, which is learning. Anyways, I hope folks feel like they've got something valuable out of this. I hope you will share the link to this conversation to continue this conversation. And, this isn't something we're going to just flip the switch on. This is a movement. And there's a lot of learning that has to come along with that for us as adults. So thanks everyone for joining us. What a phenomenal showing. And I can't thank you enough, Dr. Cooney-Horvath, for how much time you very generously have given us. And thank you for what you're doing, because you're going up against some deep pockets talking about how tech is not good for our kids. And you can ask Senator Maroney. They don't like that. And so thank you. You have
thank you.
So many parents, right, who are seeing this isn't actually working for our kids in school. Have your back, and I'm really grateful for the path you're charting. Thank you.
I love it. No, thank you. And you guys are doing the good work, so keep it up. Thank you all.
And
Ciao,
Rep,
everyone.
can I
Have a
just
great
also
time.
one more time just thank Emily, bringing this to so many people's attention, really getting people engaged, activated on this. It is so impressive what you have done, truly, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but I think it's really, really important for people to understand the power of being a constituent and reaching out to your legislators and what you can make happen. I mean, this particular evening is here happening because of you, because you brought it to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
That is the truth. Emily is the one who encouraged me to just cold message you on LinkedIn, Jared. So thank you.
Just do it. He's around.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Thanks,
you all so
everyone.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Great
everybody.
night
everyone.
ahead. I'll see y'all. Ciao.